Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today as we're going to discuss the Mars retrograde energies. And this will be part 1 on the topic as we focus on Mars retrograde in Leo. Now, Mars is going to retrograde back into Cancer in January 7th, 2025. But we're going to focus on the energies of Mars retrograde in Leo because it's a very dynamic energy here that closes out 2024 and begins 2025. For some people, it is life-changing directions. It is life-changing desires. There will be energies that are demolished and deconstructed. This is actually occurring for the first time in our lives, and I'm going to explain more about this particular phase of the Mars retrograde in Leo. So there will be a part 2 of Mars retrograde in December, and I'll cover that in January. So let's begin with an overview of this particular transit. Mars will station retrograde at 6 degrees and 10 minutes of Leo on December 6th, 2024 at 6:32 p.m. Eastern Time. This is when Mars is at a standstill. And then Mars will proceed backwards until February 23rd, 2025, reaching 17 degrees 1 minute of Cancer. The full retrograde lasts just over 11 weeks. It's the longest retrograde phase for a personal planet. The Mars retrograde lasts longer than Mercury retrograde and longer than Venus retrograde. And we only have a Mars retrograde every 2 years. The last Mars retrograde that we had was in Gemini. That started in October 2022 and lasted until January 2023. So now we are moving into new territory in your chart where Mars is retrograde in Leo for the first time since 2009 and 2010. So you haven't had a Mars retrograde in the early Leo areas of your chart since 2010. That's important to note. This particular retrograde in Leo, again, it's from 6 degrees back to 0 degrees. That's what we're covering in today's podcast. And we will have another part 2 discussing the energies in Cancer, since the energy shifts so significantly when Mars retrogrades back into Cancer. But we're looking at 6 to 0 degrees of Leo in your chart, which has not had this Mars retrograde since 2010. So know that this is what you want to identify here in December into early January. You're looking at the house where 6 to 0 degrees of Leo resides for you. Mars is moving backwards. And here's what this means. When Mars is retrograde, there is no longer the desire to assert ourselves or to move ahead. There's a sense of retraction, pulling the energy back, standing still and assessing, what do I want? Where am I going? We're meant to be more reflective. We're meant to ask questions. The Mars retrograde also pulls us back into our life force to check in with what we are creating, especially in Leo. What are you focusing on that is perhaps inspiring you? It's all consuming. It feels like it's in beautiful alignment. Now is a time to check in and determine, is this really where I want to go? Is this really what I want to move towards? And the mind will answer those questions. There's a part of you that will leap in and say, yes, it is, absolutely, all on board. But we are in a journey here that's really dynamic with this particular Mars retrograde in Leo. And I want to give you a heads up that the energies are going to change you. There's going to be parts of yourself that are not going to exist when we move into 2025. This particular Mars retrograde in Leo, again, it's life-changing for some people. And we're going to be moving through some dynamic oppositional energies in December that I'm going to talk about here. And I want to give you a heads up to look at what you're attached to, look at where you're invested, look at where you have put a lot of yourself into the Leo areas of your life, because that is what's going to be changing, especially into May 2025. Yes, May. So you're on a 5-month journey of rediscovering, recreating, and realigning with a higher aspect of yourself. And it is going to feel more personal. The Mars retrograde closes out 2024 and begins 2025. And so what we're looking at here is how new parts of ourselves are meant to be birthed and to come forward. There are new parts of your heart that are meant to expand and open up. There is new parts of your creation process, your personal power, that's also meant to powerfully emerge, but only after the old programs, habits, and attachments are broken down. There's an intensity here because this Mars in Leo is going to be opposing in December Venus in Aquarius, Ceres in Aquarius, and Pluto in Aquarius for the first time in our lives. And that's why this particular cycle is such a big deal. It's why you're going to have life changes and redirections, especially if you have planets or points between 0 to 6 degrees of Leo, 0 to 6 degrees of the fixed signs. So 0 to 6 degrees of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. This is working with you at a very deep level of your energy and of your body. Mars rules our physical selves, how we go for what we want, how we physically move, how we run energy through our bodies on a regular basis. It includes your exercise habits and routines, how you move about your life that tests your body, that challenges your body. So part of this is understanding to be careful around any potential accidents. It's not the time to take a risk. It's not the time to go big or gamble or to do anything that stretches you outside of an area that you're currently strong. So this is not the time to challenge yourself or to be more extreme because the energy doesn't support that right now. Mars retrograde in Leo is asking us to come back to where we source our courage, where we feel strong about who we are, to look at how we take charge, how we lead, how we show up, and how we're viewed. So this relates to how we show up for rewards, recognition, attention, applause. All of that is actually not supported right now. It's time to retract and pull back. It's not time to be out searching for any kind of acclaim or any support outside of yourself. It's time to get stronger within, to fortify how you recognize your own creative gifts, how you understand that you are powerful and you don't need others to validate that or to give you attention. Mars in Leo is a trigger as well. That's also how Mars operates. Mars stirs things up. It can be that catalyst for either positive developments or lower vibe developments. It can be how we search for reactions, responses, drama. All of those lower expressions of Mars in Leo are going to have a difficult journey in December and into January. If there are parts of you, or if you're around anyone who likes to stir stuff up, who really wants attention at any cost, who makes up lies, who manipulates, who does anything to get applause, to gather an audience, to get attention, none of that is going to be working here through December into January. In fact, that's where Pluto is going to come through through and destruct any of those lower expressions. And I'm going to get to the Pluto energy later on. But just so you know, this is not a time that the universe wants us to be in that energy or to support it or to perpetuate it. In fact, people who are involved in those kinds of patterns, whether it's someone at work, a family member, a friend, perhaps that individual who is super fake on social media and will do anything for the likes, the follows, none of that is going to be working in this energy of this Mars retrograde in Leo. And in fact, there's going to be pushback, removals, cancellations, unsubscribes. There's going to be people who are receiving harsh consequences for that type of behavior. Now, this does relate to what we think we have to strive for that defines our sense of self. And that Mars energy of going for it and being courageous in taking a risk, trying something different, trying something new, it's best to hold off on all of that as 2004 closes out and the new year begins. It's not the time to be too self-involved or impulsive. It's not the time to try to do a big stunt or anything that gets you attention, because the energy here is saying we're reprogramming where we access our true power. We are becoming more conscious of what it means to fully love and accept ourselves. And that is one of the higher expressions of Leo, that it comes from within. It doesn't come from who is sitting in the audience. It doesn't come from anything outside of you that tells you who you are. No, this is a time when that Mars retrograde in Leo wants you to look at where your energy is meant to be powerfully activated based on your life force, based on your creative brilliance, based on your ability to be yourself courageously and to be brutally honest with yourself around how any of that has been sourced or relied upon through external means. Leo energy is about receiving love. So you're looking at what is not really loving, what doesn't feel like love. And there could be anger and triggers around that. You could notice various patterns or habits that are demonstrations of fake love, where someone is, giving to get, or they are seeking something from you so that they can quickly receive in return. It's looking at what we believe we have to do to be loved, meaning, do you have to wear a certain mask, or have you been wearing a mask? Is there a part of yourself that is false or fake because you think that's what other people want to see? This is the type of programming that is going to be shattered. It is going to be dismantled, and this is why this energy is life-changing. So in December, we're going to see this Mars retrograde in Leo oppose Venus in Aquarius at 6 degrees. This happens December 12th and December 13th. This is the opposition between Mars and Venus that brings up relationship dynamics. We can look at it as the masculine and feminine on very different pages. We can see it as that Mars desire to assert oneself is wanting to go about something in a very different way than Venus is approaching it. Venus in Aquarius is about going into future potentials, following that next level version. This relates to relationships, next level relationships, and moving into a new part of herself that she's been working on and working through. Venus is about magnetizing, pulling in, being irresistible, and allowing her energy field to attract. She is the energy of attraction, and Mars is the energy of action. But Mars being retrograde means that he's not supported in those typical approaches or ways forward. And the opposition to Venus in Aquarius is bringing about downloads of new ways of being in connections. Now, this Venus is actually stronger because not only is she direct, she just had a conjunction with Pluto in Aquarius on December 8th. So a few days before she has this opposition to Mars, Venus in Aquarius has her second conjunction to Pluto this year. She had her first conjunction to Pluto in Aquarius back in February 16th. Now she's meeting up for the next phase of her initiation into these dynamic, future-focused, non-traditional new approaches that the Pluto in Aquarius energies are opening us up to. We are dismantling the programming, the expectations, and the traditions to a certain extent so that we can have new imprints and new archetypes in connections. And in Venus, this not only involves romantic connections, but this includes siblings, sisters, aunts, mothers, friendships, acquaintances, co-workers, essentially all feminine energies in our lives. And she is now understanding how much she has grown and evolved through 2024 when she had that first conjunction to Pluto. So this is a big deal because now this Venus in Aquarius is opposing Mars retrograde in Leo on December 12th and 13th, and she is empowered to move towards her future. And she's not looking towards the past. She's not looking towards any has-beens, anyone she previously knew or met. She's not looking for any of that anymore. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't connect. Very different expressions, very different desires. So she's now embodying more of her future self and leaving those older connections behind. And so here this Mars in Leo in retrograde needs to reflect and look at his own choices, his own journey. What is he going to choose next? And it's not immediate. There's no immediate gratification here with this Mars retrograde journey because remember, it's going to last into May 2025. So there's a slower approach here and we have to temper the energy, temper where we're feeling that fire burning, where we're desiring results or we're desiring forward movement because it's not going to show up right away through the typical means. This Mars in Leo is being reprogrammed. He's having to go back into essentially the depths of his heart. And that will be the journey that Mars continues to embark upon in January. So that's where I'll have a part 2 of Mars retrograde in Cancer, where we will pick up this energy again. But we're focusing obviously on the Mars in Leo retrograde here, where he's being challenged and there's a lot of no's. No, thank you. No, I don't want that. No, that's not good enough. No, that's not acceptable. No, no, no. That's what this energy Mars in Leo is feeling here through December. After the opposition to Venus, then Mars in Leo opposes Ceres in Aquarius. Now, Ceres just enters Aquarius on December 7th and will oppose Mars in Leo at 4 degrees. Now, Ceres is about feminine expressions related to nourishment, nurturing, motherhood, family, the feminine journey, the full spectrum of a feminine experience that not only includes creation and harvest, but grief and letting go. And that's because she is the mother of Persephone, who was abducted by Pluto, taken into the underworld, and this brought up the themes of separation and how the feminine experience revolves around our ability to handle separation, grief, and lack of connection at certain times in our lives. And so the strategy that Ceres employed after her daughter was abducted was to focus on what she could manage and control. She could tend to the crops. She could take care of providing food for herself and for her community. She could go into what needed to be cared for and use her energy in a practical, productive manner. So with Ceres entering Aquarius on December 7th, she now focuses on a nurturing style that involves tending to the individual, alternative methods and approaches. What would be a future-focused way of caring for her family, for her needs, for the earth? She steps outside of tradition and outside of family history when she moves into Aquarius, and she's aware of new methods to employ and to pull in. So she's also this feminine energy focusing on where she can go next and allowing that to support her and guide her forward. Ceres is simple, organic, natural. In Aquarius, however, she's willing to experiment and consider new recipes. So this would be fusion foods or hybrids or things that are unexpected and unconventional that have a use and a purpose. And so she is realigning with a higher version of herself to move forward towards, as well as what would be advantageous for her family. The opposition to Mars retrograde in Leo is pulling her away from just the present moment, from how she's always done things. And she's reconsidering what would be more useful as well as a better fit for my family, my community, and will stay the course potentially for the long term. The opposition then means you could feel at war with different methods or approaches. You're understanding we're not on the same page, we're not in alignment, and I need to stay focused on moving forward and moving ahead, while that Mars energy receives a second message here to pull back and reflect on how he's going about matters in his life. This is the second opposition from a feminine archetype in December that could reveal where you've outgrown an area of your life. And it could bring up anger, resentment, a sense of withholding, not showing up, punishing people. When Mars in Leo is retrograde, it will seek passive aggressive expressions. And it could be there's no desire to be present or be seen. This can show up in personal relationships as well, because if you consider Mars the masculine expression and both Venus and Ceres as the feminine expressions, this can be challenges and arguments in connections. There's also a shift in values where that Mars in Leo is standing firm, and this is how we've done things. This is what I expect. This is how things have always been. And here you have both Venus and Ceres in future-focused Aquarius that want something different, a new approach that aligns with new and different values that are coming through. After Mars has that opposition to Ceres on December 21st, then Mars retrograde in Leo has an inconjunct to the Sun in Capricorn on December 25th and 26th. This is happening at 3 degrees of Capricorn and 3 degrees of Leo. This inconjunct is where there are different intentions and desires. Different needs are present that cannot be compromised, and they're not on the same page. The Sun in Capricorn is stronger as it asserts authority and wants to stand in tradition, how things have always been done, what works, what's been proven to be effective and important through the years. This Mars retrograde in Leo can be pouty, childish, reactionary, and want to hide in its room because Mars in Leo is not getting its way. So a heads up that around Christmas and Hanukkah, the beginning of Hanukkah this year, the energy can show up as these outbursts, dissatisfaction. I don't want to do what we've always done. I don't want to go with the family. There can be a rebellious energy that comes up here as that Mars retrograde in Leo is inconjunct the Sun in Capricorn. And yet with Mars in a fire sign, there's a need to do something with the energy and to move it ahead. So it's a great time then to do something physical so that Mars in Leo still has a healthy outlet for any frustration or anger that might come up. I know as I'm going through all this, you're like, Molly, this is all hard energy. Yeah, it is. It is. That's why I want to give you a heads up so that you're conscious and aware of how this Mars retrograde in Leo is not a happy camper in December and is coming up against forces that are challenging his natural ability to be himself. And we haven't even reached the pinnacle yet, because the pinnacle of this energy starts January 1st to January 3rd, where Mars retrograde in Leo opposes Pluto in Aquarius at 1 degree for the first time in our lives. And this is where serious life changes occur. This is where there is rage, violence, extreme actions and behaviors. This is where that Mars in Leo is meeting up with the darker undercurrents of Pluto in Aquarius that is deconstructing where Mars energy is not aligned with the future. So this is going to feel for some people like a huge ego death. That's what this Mars in Leo is experiencing through the opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. It is the strongest January 1st to January 3rd, and it is exact on January 3rd. Now keep in mind, we had this opposition the beginning of November, but each planet was in the cardinal signs. Mars was in Cancer, Pluto was in Capricorn. And that energy laid the groundwork for what was experienced during the election, the fallout, the extreme energies that were coming up in the collective, which Mars in Cancer represented. Now, Mars is in Leo, wanting to be in his personal power and assert his personal will, but because he's retrograde, the energy is diminished. It doesn't make an impact. It's not as strong, and it certainly doesn't stand a chance against this Pluto in Aquarius. So this standoff occurs at 1 degree of Leo, 1 degree of Aquarius. This is major ego deaths. This is life-changing redirections. And those redirections are not going to be obvious immediately. In fact, they probably won't be clear until April or May. And this is a powerful standoff where we're meant to understand that the age of Aquarius is taking us into more expressions and genius, more levels of brilliance and soul wisdom than we've ever embodied. And as a result, there are parts of ourselves that have to die, that have to experience that death, that dark night of the soul. There's a part of our energy that is now needing to be reprogrammed. So think of it as an upgrading process that will take time to unfold and play out. But it's directed at that Mars retrograde in Leo, working with the solar plexus, working with any false versions of self, working with those themes I mentioned earlier in the podcast around the masks, the false self, the unhealthy ego, any forms of narcissism, extreme selfishness, anything that's only about the individual and doesn't consider how that individual aura affects the collective, the community. Pluto in Aquarius has a higher soul intention to evolve any limited versions of self. And in order to do so, there is a deeper initiation that must occur. And so the year begins with this retrograde Mars opposing Pluto in Aquarius. And this means there will be some challenges, severe endings, rage, and angry disruptions as the Mars retrograde in Leo roars in dissatisfaction, disempowerment, and has to face what is no longer an energetic match as we move into 2025. The intention of Pluto in Aquarius is ultimately around reprogramming us with higher frequencies, more evolved aspects of ourselves, allowing for that upgrade to occur, but we have to have room and acceptance around what no longer works and what's no longer needed. And so this Mars retrograde in Leo is going to feel that most personally. Then there will be a second opposition to Pluto in Aquarius in late April. In late April, when Mars is direct again, the opposition will occur at 3 degrees of Leo and 3 degrees of Aquarius. And it will be the next level removal. It will be more that is extracted. It is more that is dug up from the depths, because that's what Pluto does. It goes into those fears and asks you to address them. So this could be an invitation for many people to embark upon some very serious shadow work, to meet parts of themselves that they have pushed away, they haven't wanted to see or accept. This could be a part of one's experience that reveals what they are ultimately outgrowing. And Pluto is asking for release, asking for that Mars in Leo to detach and no longer cling or hold on to aspects of oneself that aren't moving ahead, that aren't a part of this next cycle. After Mars retrograde in Leo opposes Pluto in Aquarius at 1 degree during the beginning of January, then Mars will make a trine to that north node in Aries at 0 degrees. Now, 0 degrees of Aries is a very potent energy. It's the point of new creation. It is the beginning of the full zodiac wheel. It has great importance in astrology. It's called the Aries point, but it's where we have a huge reset. And that's part of this Mars retrograde in Leo journey, is that there is a cosmic reset happening here. And as Mars trines that north node in Aries, there is the opening up to a new version of self that's meant to come through. Now, this particular trine only happens once. It happens right after that opposition to Pluto in Aquarius, and it's almost like being stripped bare and left in a very raw form that allows for the new to arrive, that allows for a recreation process to begin. So keep in mind, there is a divine purpose to all of this, even if it is very difficult and it's challenging. I mean, I can't make it any lighter or brighter than it is. Like, some people are really going to be in it and going through it, and we're going to see it in the collective. But as the energies continue to play out, more hope emerges, more possibilities show up. And there will be rewards, because there's always a promise with Pluto. And when these energies are in such creative expressions, both Leo and Aquarius are very creative. There's going to be even better developments that show up as a result of what is ending. What is being destroyed and what is closing out is going to lead to new, beautiful manifestations that are a better fit and a better frequency. And this is why it's important to know and remember that you are a soul on a never-ending journey of limitless expressions and limitless creation ability. That you are here to have many chapters of your energy and many ways of experiencing it in this lifetime. And so after Mars retrograde in Leo opposes Pluto as initiation into transformation in order to evolve the Mars in Leo energies. Then Mars retrogrades into Cancer on January 6th, and the energy shifts. And that's where I will have a part 2 for you, because as Mars goes back into Cancer, it's a return to the great mother within. It's a return to the river and flow of Cancer energies to reclaim your needs, feelings, personal energies, to do any deeper work around that inner child or family experiences at a young age, to look into how you really feel, what you've been harboring or holding that has been very unhealthy, and to move into a state of greater self-nurturing that can churn with these energies and do something productive with them that ultimately benefits the Mars expressions. Mars retrograde in Leo is a time for all of us to remain more conscious and intentional around what we truly want and how we're moving towards it. This relates to our creation abilities, sexuality, desires, hobbies, passions. This relates to masculine energies, both within us and around us. It relates to all men in our lives and in the world at large. Mars relates to leadership, goals, your personal agenda, and how you want to get somewhere. Mars relates to how you stand up for yourself, how you deal with challenges and pushback, how you face obstacles, and how you desire to move towards what you want. So I feel that this particular phase of Mars retrograde in Leo is significant for each of us, as well as for the collective, because of the oppositions that Mars in Leo is going to be facing in order to slow down and halt that autopilot programming, to help you become more conscious of what you're creating in all areas of your life, especially as it relates to self-expression, love, partnerships, romance, sex, risk-taking, and having the courage to be yourself. Keep in mind that with a strong retrograde, nothing is personal. Everyone is moving through their own challenges, their own internal processing. Nothing is personal, and it might be necessary to step back and give more people space, as well as to honor when you need more space, so that you aren't trying to get something from another who is not able or willing to provide it. Keep in mind, I will continue to discuss these Mars retrograde energies in my Wednesday podcast, where we look at the weekly transiting energies. And I'll be back in January 2025 with part 2 as the energy shifts and Mars retrogrades back into Cancer. And we'll discuss that more, as well as what Mars retrograde will be experiencing through the watery expressions of Cancer. Remember to always go higher, to see the bigger picture, and that the universe is co-creating with you at all times. The universe is here to support your next level and your upgrades, to show you new possibilities. And when you go higher, you're able to connect with that even more for yourself. I also recommend exploring the 12 universal spiritual laws that are always active and working with us, because that's going to help you be in your power and be aware of the best choices to make. You can look at the universal spiritual laws as it applies to your astrology chart in my new course, Your 12 Cosmic Codes. And we look at the universal spiritual laws connected with Leo, the universal spiritual laws connected with Aquarius. And right there, you could get some breakthroughs in your chart around what to activate and how to work with these strong oppositions in a wiser way. So do check out that course, because it provides a really cool personal lens on your astrology chart. We are all connected to all the universal spiritual laws all the time, but this could give you some breakthroughs and understandings around the themes in your life. So if you're interested, I will put the link below the podcast and you can check that out, as it certainly might help you navigate these energies of Mars retrograde even better. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back every Monday and Wednesday for a new podcast episode. Wishing you the very best as we move through this Mars retrograde in Leo part 1 phase. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with you soon. Take good care.